The May 9th, 2023 regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order at 7 p.m. Attorney Winter will now swear in new commissioner member Bob Martinez.
Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Robert Martinez, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Mexico, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of Planning and Zoning Commissioner of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque under the penalty of New Mexico law. Congratulations, Commissioner. Thank you.
Bob, welcome. Thank you. We'll now have a roll call vote. Commissioner Holman? Here. Commissioner Barrow?
Here.
Commissioner Gay?
Here.
Commissioner Christensen?
Here.
Commissioner Smith? Absent. Commissioner Martinez?
Here.
Commissioner Michelson, present. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present for the meeting. Approval of the agenda. Director Rubin, are there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, no, there are not.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Holman?
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Michelson, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Public comment period. Residents may address the Planning and Zoning Commission to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Audience members will be given an opportunity to comment on agenda items as they come up. Speakers must register with the village staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. I have a list of those who signed up to speak. Please come up to the platform as your name is called. Speakers will have 3 minutes. Public comment sign up, Hank Kelly. Ganado McKenzie. Gordine McKenzie. Please state your name and address correctly. I'm sorry.
Okay. Gordine McKenzie, 7315 Guadalupe Trail Northwest. I just had a quick few comments in relation to the cluster housing conservation subdivision that we all met in on Thursday. In reflection, I was thinking that the questions may not have been broad enough to address the complexity of the issue of pilot projects. And there was an assumption that we are moving forward with the conservation subdivisions. I just want to recommend that we slow down, that we extend a 2-year possible moratorium so we can try to see what the first pilot project yields, what kind of responses and reactions there are. And it also brought up some other issues that we didn't discuss in detail, including what impact the subdivisions will have on the residents, and the idea that should we limit the number of subdivisions. I think all of these are questions that we can ask, hopefully in other meetings. And do we really want to approve casitas for the houses in the subdivisions? And again, I'm appreciative that we had the opportunity to speak, but I'm hoping we can continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nanli Nashawina, same address? Sorry, didn't get that right either.
I didn't realize my handwriting was so bad. It's Nancy Nangeroni, and same address, 7315 Guadalupe Trail. So I want to introduce myself to y'all. I've been a resident here for almost 7 years now. I'm an engineer by training and by avocation. And before moving here, honestly, I never considered a zoning issue at all. And now I find myself considering these issues. And I want to, first of all, and I should have started with this, I want to say I appreciate the commitment each of you has made to serve on this commission. I know the time it takes. I saw how long the papers were, it's not the agenda, it's the packet. My God. So I understand that you guys are committed, are making a sacrifice, and are giving to the village, and I really appreciate that. I'm part of what got me involved in thinking about zoning issues was the development that you'll be considering later tonight. And I'm not going to talk about that development, but rather the zoning laws that gave rise to that development. When I learned how they were written and setting that next to the village's desire to remain a semi-rural environment, the two seemed at pretty intense odds. To me, it seemed like the zoning we're talking about for C1 had been written for an urban environment. There were restrictions on how far from the curb a building could be. Not how close you could be, but how you couldn't be more than 12 feet from the curb. And there were also height restrictions, but worst of all, there was a density restriction. And a density restriction normally for a semi-rural environment would be written as you can't have more than so many people on such amount of space, or so many buildings or houses or whatever. But the density restriction was written, you have to have at least 24 units per acre. This was so bad that a proposal with 8 units was rejected because it didn't have enough. And someone who went for a permit to upgrade
Excuse me,
an
can you
apartment.
finish your thought?
I will finish.
Your time has expired.
I will finish, sorry. A person, let me just finish this real quick. A person who had a single apartment wanted to renovate that apartment for their tenant. They were told they couldn't do that unless they built another 9 units. So I just want to say that this has been changed now, and that's a wonderful thing. But we're coming from having been under some zoning rules that didn't
Thank you.
make sense. Thank you.
Kiko, do we have any members of the public signed up to speak joining online?
I don't have any hands raised.
Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak during the public comment period who did not sign up prior to the meeting? Please use the raise your hand to indicate that. Okay? Consent agenda. All members listed under the consent agenda are considered, all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or comments from the commissioners? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I think I'm moving to approve the minutes.
Yes, the minutes, sorry.
I move to approve the minutes of April 11th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
A roll call vote. Commissioner Holman?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Michelson, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Public hearings and applications. Will all those who will be speaking before the commission tonight please stand to be sworn in? This is for all public hearings and applications on the agenda tonight. If you will be speaking on any of these public hearings and applications, please stand. Attorney Winter, will you now swear in those providing testimony tonight?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item BB 2301, a request by David and Candace Dart for a bed and breakfast permit as allowed under 9.2.25 E1 in the A1 zone on the North Rio Grande character area. The property is located at 6434 Rio Grande Boulevard Northwest, is legally known as MRGCD Map 29, Track 62AB and 62A-A2A, and contains 0.59 acres more or less. Are there any commissioners who will recuse themselves from this item? Director Rubin, may we have the planning report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item before you is a request for a bed and breakfast permit as allowed by the Village Code, Section 9.2.25E1 in the A1 zone in the North Rio Grande character area. The property is located at 6434 Rio Grande Boulevard Northwest. B&B permits are allowed in all zones with an approved B&B permit. There are a number of requirements for the applicant to meet, and the application is in compliance with all of them, as I will summarize. The operator is the property owner, lives on premises in the main dwelling, and provided proof of primary residence. There are no employees. Lodging is shown within a portion of the main residence, as noted on the site plan. One guest room is noted on the floor plan and application, compliant with the 4 allowed. Off-street parking is required, with 2 spaces for the property owner/operator and 1 space per bedroom/rental unit. 3 spaces are required for this application and are met with a 2-car garage and 2 additional parking spaces next to the garage. Meals will not be served. The occupancy limit noted on the rules of operation includes guests. Maximum authorized number of guests are noted as twice the number of B&B guests, which is compliant. Quiet hours are noted in the rules of operation, There will be no sign on the premises. The rules of operation are compliant with our ordinance. The site plan is compliant. The floor plan provided with the rental area is noted as a portion of the main/only house. The department does not recommend any additional conditions of approval as the application is in compliance with section 9.2.25E1. And no prior B&B application has been submitted for the property in the prior 6 months. The department recommends approval of BB 23-01, a request for a bed and breakfast permit as allowed by 9.2.25E1 in the A1 zone in the North Rio Grande character area, with the findings and conditions that are noted in the planning report. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners for Director Rubin? Is the applicant present? Please come forward, state your name and address. Right up here.
David Tart, 6434 Rio Grande Boulevard, Northwest.
Do you have any additional comments that you want to make about your application or take any questions from the commissioners?
I don't think so. I don't know how often we're going to rent this out, but we wanted to try it, so we'll see if it works out. My wife might not like it, so.
Do the commissioners have any questions for the applicant? I have a list of those who sign up to speak on this item, although there are two. Could I see the list of those who want to speak for or against this item? I don't see any hands raised. Kiko, do you have anyone joining online who would like to speak on this application?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
There are no hands raised.
All right. If there's no other discussion, is there a motion to recommend approval of BB 2301?
I move to approve BB 23-01, a request by David and Candace Tart for a bed and breakfast permit as allowed by section 9.25 E1 in the A1 zone in the North Rio Grande character area.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Homan,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Michelson, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Let the record show that the public hearing, item 4A, the request by David and Carolyn Tart for a bed and breakfast permit is formally closed.
Thank you.
The following will apply to items of business 4B, 4C, and 4D. I want to take this opportunity to address 1, the process, 2, what constitutes a record, 3, disclosures of any ex parte communication, and 4, conflicts of interest. For the process, both village ordinance and village resolutions apply here. Section 9.2.25H of the ordinances guides the process. That ordinance refers to the resolution titled Rules for Appeal. Pursuant to the rules for appeal, I may limit oral presentations by applicants, proponents, opponents, and other testimony in the interest of time and orderly procedures. Based on this guidance, the following time limits will apply, and we will hear from interested parties as follows. Applicant case presentation, allowed time 25 minutes, followed by commission questions. B, then appellant's questions, 15 minutes. C, then public poses questions, comments 2 minutes per person. 2, appellate case presentation, 25 minutes, Friends of Los Ranchos, followed by commission questions, followed by applicant questions, 15 minutes. Then the public may post questions and comments, 2 minutes per person. All questions must be asked through the chair. In accordance with the rules for appeals, all appeals to the Planning Commission shall be deemed quasi-judicial proceedings, which means certain judicial processes and protections are required. All testimony must be given under oath and shall be limited to matters relevant to the appeal. All testimony and questions shall be asked through the chair. The chair will acknowledge those who want to give testimony or ask questions, as well as enter into the record communications received from the public concerning the pending application. All persons participating in meetings of the Planning Commission are expected to conduct themselves in a courteous manner. The Planning Commission shall render a written decision within 15 days of the hearing. The written decision shall include an order and the factual and legal basis for the order. I will now address what constitutes the record for these appeals. Section 9.2.25H1C. All written material shall be submitted 30 days prior to the hearing date in a number of copies determined by the village clerk. Should this matter proceed any further on appeal, the record will include any and all notices of decision, proof of public notice, the appeal, and any written comments, and of course, the results of this process. Ex parte communications. When an application or other request is placed on the agenda, bless you, for a regular or special meeting, it becomes a matter within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission and subject to the legal restraints on ex parte communication with commissioners. Undisclosed ex parte communications could compromise the fair and open purpose of these rules for the transaction of business. If a commissioner believes that they have been contacted ex parte on this matter, it is their obligation to so inform the other members of the Planning Commission and the village attorney prior to the matter's consideration, and if the ex parte communication was in writing, submit it as part of the record for the meeting. Given this, is there any commissioner who wishes to make such a disclosure at this time? Please do so now and state the name of the contacting party and when they contacted you.
Mr. Commissioner, as a new member, when the packet was sent out, I was out of the country and I just came back on Sunday. To be a professional and to fulfill my end of the deal with you guys, I feel that I am not prepared and want to be very upfront with it. And so I'd like to recuse myself from this particular meeting and these particular 3 things on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Let the record reflect that. Various matters presented to the Planning Commission for decision may present the potential for conflicts of interest for individual commissioners. It's the obligation of each commission member to declare for the record any instance where a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest might exist. Such commissioner must then withdraw from further deliberations, including participation in discussion and any decision-making. Are there any commissioner who will excuse themselves from this item? Finally, I have one closing comment, and this goes without saying. Please be polite and respectful to everyone who comments tonight, as they are taking the time out of their day to let their voices be heard. Thank you. B, C, and D, appeals to SDP 2301, SDP 2302, and SDP 2303. Appeals of 3 Village of Los Ranchos administrative approvals of requests by Palandon Communities for site development plans and recommendations to the Board of Trustees at the southeast corner of 4th Street Northwest and Osuna Road Northwest. SDP 2301 includes income-restricted apartments and approximately 13,000 square feet of ground floor retail space. SDP 2302 and 2303 include income-restricted residential apartments only. The subject properties are Zone VC, Village.
Nicholson, it's very difficult to hear you. I can't hear you at all. We're having a real hard time hearing. Did we turn up the speaker?
Appeals of 3 Village Los Ranchos administrative approvals of requests by Paladon Communities for site development plans and recommendation to the Board of Trustees at the southeast corner of 4th Street Northwest and Osuna Road Northwest. SDP 2301 includes income-restricted residential apartments and approximately 13,000 square feet of ground floor retail. SDP 2302 and 2303 include income-restricted residential apartments only. The subject properties are Zone VC, Village Center, and are in the 4th Street character area. The properties are legally known as Tract 1, 2, and 3, Trailhead at Chamasal Subdivision, Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, New Mexico, is filed in the office of the Bernalillo County Clerk on August 25th, 2022. The properties contain approximately 1.6096, 1.9075, and 1.8761 acres respectively. Ms. Winters, will you please swear in Director Rubin?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my hearing aid came off, came apart, and part of it was trapped in my ear.
Oh, no.
And I not only can't hear, I'm worried that I need to get that out of there. So maybe Joe and I can step out in the lobby and you can take something and try to.
Oh, gosh.
Mr. Chairman,
I was having trouble hearing and I was trying to turn the hearing aid up.
Mr. Chairman, let me suggest maybe a 5-minute break.
Yes.
All right, there's a
Get it done in 5 minutes or we won't get it done at all.
there's a 5-minute break.
Dr. Craig. Maybe I'll get, is there Dr. Campbell?
I know.
We're still waiting for a couple of people that are making the presentation, but please be seated. Trying to do what?
They're trying to use some tasers now. Joe Craig just came in with an emergency kit. Joe Craig just came in with one. I just watched him.
call the meeting back to order. Attorney Winters, will you please swear in Director Rubin and
She already did.
then have her present the appeal?
They got it.
We have clapping. This sounds positive. I think the hearing aid might.
Director Rubin has been sworn in, so she is ready to present the application or the
Okay.
report.
I think they're walking back in. Mel, I'm trying to decide how much of your 25 minutes I'm going to charge you. Director Rubin, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. The items before you are appeals to 3 administrative approvals of requests by Palindrome Communities for site development plans on tracts 1, 2, and 3 of the Village Center project. The site development plan for tract 1 includes income-restricted residential apartments and approximately 13,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The site development plans for tracts 2 and 3 include income-restricted residential apartments only. The Village Center project, encompassing approximately 12 acres on the southeast side of 4th Street in Osuna, has been contemplated for 22 years. The project came about initially to address some key challenges identified in the 2010 master plan, developed and adopted in the year 2000, and that still exist today, namely an aging population, high property values, and limited housing options for younger people to remain/move into the village. A mixed-use development at 4th and Osuna, one of the most urbanized, heavily trafficked areas in the village, was seen as the perfect place to build with some moderate densification and more affordable housing options for young adults, young families, and seniors. For some background, the Village Center zone was created in 2002. The Village Center project area was identified by ordinance and was declared a metropolitan redevelopment area in 2007. Shortly thereafter, the village began acquiring property in the designated zone and continued to do so for the next 10 years. The text of the Village Center zone was modified in 2018 to its current version after a series of meetings and recommendations made by the 2016 through 17 Planning and Zoning Commission. In 2018, the village adopted the Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan, which allowed for a public-private partnership to develop the project. In 2018, after the adoption of the plan, the village issued a request for proposals to identify and select an experienced developer with the required finances to acquire, consolidate, design, develop, operate, and own the Village Center Metropolitan Redevelopment Area. Palindrome Communities, LLC submitted the successful proposal. On the matter of the appeals, on February 15th, 2023, following staff review, analysis, and the required 15-day public notice period, the Village of Los Ranchos approved SDP 2301, SDP 2302, and SDP 2303 with the findings and conditions identified in their respective planning reports and documented in their respective notices of decision, dated February 15th, 2023. The review and approval process was administrative in accordance with the terms of the Village Center Project Development Agreement. Because these are appeals to administrative decisions, they are appealed to the Planning Commission. That is why it is before you tonight. The main points of concern as listed in the appeal letter are as follows, and I will address each one by one. One, the Planning and Zoning Director and Village Administrator do not have the legal authority to approve site development plans. Regarding the administrative approval process, the appellant asserts that only the Board of Trustees would have the power to delegate approval power on matters including site development plans to the Planning and Zoning Director and/or Village Administrator. The development agreement approved by the Board of Trustees on October 14th, 2020 contemplates this administrative approval process in Section 3.3 of the Executed Development Agreement. The administrative approval process for the site development plans was therefore expressly authorized by a vote of the Board of Trustees. The development agreement was entered pursuant to the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act, the MRA, which gives local governments broad powers necessary or convenient to carry out its purposes. Point number 2, Trustee George Radnovich's conflict of interest requires the applications to be resubmitted. In response, Trustee Radnovich had no involvement in the actions appealed. The site development plans were approved by the Village Administrator and Planning and Zoning Director. Although he has disclosed a conflict, there was no decision from which he would have been required to recuse himself if under the Governmental Conduct Act, and no conflict to disclose in the notices of decisions. Number 3, SDP 2301, 02, and 03 do not comply with the village's zoning code or the Affordable Housing Act. The site development plans are in compliance with the Village Center zone requirements as detailed in the planning report. And the appellant suggests that NMSA 1978 6-27-7 applies because Palindrome received funding through a federal low-income housing program. That provision applies to low-income housing grants and is not implicated by approval of the site development plans. And lastly, the village's failure to provide public notice of its actions violated the Open Meetings Act. The Open Meetings Act requires meetings of a public body to be open and prohibits the conduct of public business and formation of policy by vote in a closed meeting. The appellant is not challenging an action conducted by a vote, and no meeting of a public body was held. The department recommends denial of the appeals of SDP 23-01, SDP 23-02, and SDP 23-03 at the southeast corner of 4th Street Northwest and Osuna Road Northwest in the Village Center zone within the 4th Street character area, with the findings and conditions included in the planning report. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions for Director Rubin? Okay, it's now time for the applicant to present their case. Mr. Campbell, you have 25 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I need to cross-examine.
Cross-examine.
A report.
Attorney Winters.
Mr. Chair, no. The process includes Mr. Eves may question the applicant, which includes Mr. Campbell or Mr. Glass. That's the way the process is set up.
But if may I respond?
I would like you to sit down.
I would like to respond to what she just said.
Respond.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Respond.
Respond. Can we get you the...
Microphone. The microphone.
Sorry. I'm thinking more about my hearing than I am my talking. So she didn't go to she's got a microphone, so that's good. Okay. The problem is that Maida Rubin, although she is an employee of the village, she's here to advocate a notice of these notices of decision that she prepared under a system that is totally not found in our ordinances. This is a totally made-up system. 3.3 of the development agreement, which she has referred to, basically, in the village's opinion,
He's arguing.
they say that they can replace and supersede the ordinances with that contractual provision. You can't do that.
Mr.
There's a
Chair?
specific procedure in the ordinances
now,
here
please
for
be-
amending the ordinance. They did not go through that procedure, and I want to cross-examine her about this because this is the key to the case. The whole case is based on 3.3 in the development agreement. If this concocted procedure that they're trying to sell you, rather than the written, duly enacted ordinance, is just nonsense,
Mr. Chair?
Chairman. And we need to talk to her because she made the decision. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we proceed with the process for appeal. And if there are questions at the end,
Yes.
we can have Mr. Eves raise them then.
Mr. Campbell, would you proceed with your presentation? You have 25 minutes.
Los Ranchos has a lot of friends. And I'm looking at these friends. Those people who care deeply about this village are friends. My name is David Campbell. I am an attorney representing Palindrome Communities. I have with me Weston Glass, who is the project director of the trailhead at Chamizal, and he will be speaking later. Today we're going to tell you, Mel, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Yeah, good. Today we're going to tell you about the many, many friends over many, many years that this wonderful village has. In order to name the many village friends, you need to go back quite a few years. 21 years ago in 2002, when Mayor John Hooker, right there, was the mayor of Los Ranchos, the Board of Trustees adopted ordinance number 172, which created the VC Village Center Zone. Mayor Hooker was is an architect, and one of those visionary friends who knew that Los Ranchos could be a welcoming and self-sustaining municipality if it created an economic center for the village, but in the style and scale of this rural community. So Mayor Hooker and the Board of Trustees 20 years ago were visionary friends of Los Ranchos. Are people having trouble hearing? Okay.
Please be quiet while Mr. Campbell's speaking. Thank you.
So the Village Center Zone that was adopted 21 years ago says, in relevant part, commercial development should be limited to those uses which are deemed to encourage pedestrian activity and draw large numbers of individuals to the area for the use of the general retail, restaurant, and service establishments. To support the desired commercial development, the Village Center Zone should be the highest density residential zoning district in the village of Los Ranchos. Now, Nancy earlier during public comments made some comments about why we would do this. And the answer is that this has been on the books for 21 years as part of the VC Village Center Zone. So we have many friends in the village of Los Ranchos who have been involved in this. A few years later, Mayor Larry Abraham of blessed memory was a great friend of the village when he and the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Trustees identified the southeast corner of Osuna and 4th Street as the village center and declared the area to be a metropolitan redevelopment area. Mayor Abraham, God rest his soul, knew that a proper village center would be a complex transaction requiring innovation and redevelopment tools. Again, the VC zone addresses that because, and this is to Mr. Eaves's point, where he says it's a made-up process, it's actually in the VC zone that in the project area, the village will encourage the types of development envisioned and may control development parameters by requiring economic development plans, entering into development agreements, and to the extent the land may be owned or controlled by the village by filing covenants and restrictions dealing with development and use of the land in addition to the zoning ordinances. In addition to the zoning ordinances. The late Mayor Abraham was an energetic friend of Los Ranchos. He enthusiastically promoted the village center as a multi-use area with commercial enterprises, homes, and shops. He knew that with a welcoming, attractive, and viable 4th Street corridor and village center, this village would have the tax revenues paid mainly by visitors who would fund the many municipal services and other important priorities like acquiring and protecting open space and the rural nature of the village. I knew Larry Abraham since we were both in high school, and he was passionate about this village and this village center. When the village began drafting the master plan under his tenure, the 2035 Village Master Plan included specific mention of the village center at this very location with mixed uses, commercial and residential. The master plan, and I'll cite from page 93, says that one of the goals of the master plan is to ensure the development of a village center at the southeastern corner of 4th Street and Osuna Road. It's remarkable that in the master plan for the village, which is essentially the constitution of the village for its land uses, it points out the specific location of where the village center was to be. But that's because these friends, Mayor Hooker, Mayor Abraham, knew that this was going to be a very important economic center for the village. Larry Abraham was a great friend of Los Ranchos, and we miss his energy and his vision. He left us way too soon. In fact, 5 days and 5 years ago today. Mayor Don Lopez, likewise, is a great visionary and friend of Los Ranchos. Under his leadership, the 2035 master plan has very specific guidance to assure the development of the village center. Mayor Lopez's administration acquired certain parcels, as Ms. Rubin said, for the village at 4th and Osuna, and he has continued with the development plans financing the village center under the Metropolitan Redevelopment Code. Now, let me bring it home to this Planning and Zoning Commission. Let's talk about you as friends of Los Ranchos, responsible for the 2035 master plan. Many of you here serving on this P&Z commission were on the master plan committee. Karen Christensen, Dan Gay, JT Michelson, Sandra Pacheco, Drew Seavey, who used to be on this body, were also on the master plan committee doing the good work, the hard work of the 2035 master plan. And Mary Holman was on the board of trustees when the master plan passed. So you were all deeply involved in this work of the master plan and its designation of the village center. Our current current mayor, Don Lopez, issued a request for proposals for developers to fulfill the vision of these many friends to build the village center. There were 4 proposals submitted, and my client, Palindrome Communities, emerged the winner, having done excellent mixed-use developments in Oregon and in Albuquerque. The Palindrome proposal won because of its unique approach to maintaining the look and feel of Los Ranchos with an economic and small business approach. The village center will have an acequia, a community garden, a center for business development, housing, retail, and micro retail. An economic study demonstrated a total annual economic impact of over $14 million a year for the village. In October of 2020, under Mayor Lopez, the Village Board of Trustees approved a purchase, sale, and development agreement, we'll call it the development agreement, with the RFP winner, Palindrome, to build a mixed-use residential commercial development on this metropolitan redevelopment site. Both the VC zone and the Metropolitan Redevelopment Code authorize and encourage the execution of development agreements for the village center. Now, we need to point out here, because it wasn't a random act by some stranger to this village. It was the Board of Trustees, which happens to be the zoning authority that passed not only the master plan, but also passed on the development agreement that is the center of this matter today. And as the zoning authority, they decided the allowed uses for the village center, the process by which the project would be designed, phased, approved, financed, and built. And our friends on the Board of Trustees are responsible for this project, and they've kept in very close tabs on the overall project through the development agreement, which has much detail about how the village center project and the redevelopment will happen. Other friends of Los Ranchos include members of the planning and zoning staff and the village administrator. The development agreement approved by the Board of Trustees, which is the zoning authority for this municipality, instructs the staff to do certain things in a certain order, including using their best professional judgment to review and determine whether this village center project complies with the village's instructions. Now, I could go on. I've spent 37 years at this work, and I can tell you, based on that development agreements are frequently used now, certainly in these kinds of public-private partnerships and in development arrangements where the city or the municipality and the private sector have a number of things that they have to work on together. And there are books written for land use lawyers about development agreements and how they are to work. So it's proper that a development agreement is now in place to help with the development of the village center. The staff has already responded directly to each of the appellant's statements, but let me just circle back. The administrative approvals were required by the Board of Trustees in the development agreement, and the VC zone specifically allows the village to enter into development agreements. Also, the Metropolitan Redevelopment Code encourages the use of development agreements to conduct redevelopment. And the Metropolitan Redevelopment Code at 3-60A-10 goes further, and it says that the municipality can plan or replan, zone or rezone any part within the jurisdiction of the local government or make exceptions from building regulations. The language of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Code is very broad and is incorporated in the development agreement here. The developer, Palindrome, is under a very strict calendar for completion of the project and has obtained all permits to proceed on the construction. Palindrome has correctly relied on and complied with all of its agreements with the village. It's paid over $2 million in bonds to guarantee that it will conclude the work in the manner required by the village, including installation of very expensive public and private infrastructure. The appellants raised the issue of architect and trustee George Radnovich. He has had no involvement in this matter as it's come before the village and has already said that he would recuse himself. And it's ironic that a volunteer legislator for the village should be told that he can't keep his day job, that he can't do his day job because he's serving as a volunteer trustee. That shouldn't be the way it happens. In fact, he was working with this project before he stood for election and got elected, and he has said that he would recuse himself from any public role on this very project, in a similar way to how Commissioner Martinez recused himself tonight. So it is not unusual that we would handle that kind of issue that way. Let me make one final point, and that is that affordable housing is being constructed in the village center, and it means that the goals of the 2035 master plan promoting housing for all income levels will be achieved this way. The VC zone identifies the village center as the most intensive residential zone in the entire village. I want to have Weston Glass come up and just say some things about the project itself and its affordability and who can qualify. Weston, if you don't mind.
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. So yeah, I wanted to talk about the affordability of these apartments. I think there's a lot of misinformation going around about what the affordability actually means. So these apartments are affordable at 60% of AMI, area median income. And what that means is for a family of 4 this year, that would be $45,000 a year. The rent is also restricted. All of these incomes and rents are set by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. They're changed every year. But just to give you a few examples of the kind of person or family who would make that money is private school teachers, daycare providers, medical assistants, EMTs, a sheriff candidate, or what do they call them? Cadet at Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, servers and cooks at restaurants, grocery store workers, film crew people, and maintenance people at open spaces and parks. These are members of the community who are hardworking, who deserve a decent place to live for them and their families. And on top of the affordable residential, we're also bringing affordable commercial spaces to the corner of 4th and Osuna. These are what we call micro retail. You can visit the Elvado Motel redevelopment on Central to see a great example. They're very small commercial spaces that give up-and-coming entrepreneurs a chance to open their business in a physical location without having to pay a huge amount of rent. They can just pay like a small amount of rent and go into business the very next day. They don't have to deal with all the complications of a big commercial space. And these people love these spaces. I'd like to mention that I have a waiting list of both residents for the residential and commercial tenants. And a lot of the commercial tenants are local Los Ranchos business people. So I'm just want to say that this project is going to be a great improvement for the village. And it's, I think there's a lot of misinformation, but it's a positive project. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, the complaint about the violation of the Open Meetings Act is not appropriate. There was no violation. The zoning authority's choice was to engage in a specific development agreement. It has had open meetings about that, and the developer, the specific development agreement with the developer is frequently done, particularly in a complex transaction with many government-mandated conditions in a redevelopment area. In conclusion, this project has been the vision of many friends of the village and public officials over many years, decades, in fact. Beginning with the creation of the Village Center zone, the identification of this very site as the Village Center, the Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan and its designations, the 2035 Master Plan that many of you worked on, the village's acts of purchasing these lands, then conducting a development RFP competition, and now following through on building the Village Center that has been dreamed about for decades. Palindrome Communities is pleased to have been chosen to build this very important project for the village and to count itself as one of the village's great friends. This development is the work of many over many years, including many of you. And the objections don't even touch on the site development plan issues that you have to be appealing from. These are all outside of the site development plan. They really haven't made, and I'll wait to hear Mr. Eves, whether they're making an objection about the site development plan itself, but I haven't heard anything about hydrology or water and sewer, or traffic circulation or curb and gutter and so on. We'll wait and see. But for all of those reasons, the appeals should be denied. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand for questions.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Campbell?
I do.
Holmes?
So in,
Is your mic on?
yes. Mr. Campbell, so in areas that, that you have cited that do use the Metropolitan Development Plan or
Yes.
Act, do those communities or locales, for lack of a better term, do they also have in their ordinances or do they also have in their ordinances or policies that adopt the agreement somehow, just in general terms, a Metropolitan Development Act? Do they somehow bring that into their ordinance? So I'm trying to, what I'm trying to get at, are we unique, in your opinion, and I understand there's other opinions that may be brought up, are we unique that we have tried to do, or we have acted upon this Metropolitan Development Plan without it being backed up within our ordinance?
In fact, it is backed up in your ordinance. It was adopted, the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act for Los Ranchos was adopted in 2007 and has been a part of this, including the designation of blight of this particular property, which is something that must be done in order to qualify for the designation as a Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan. And there are a number of criteria. There may be 10 or a dozen criteria that constitute what is blight. And we see this in, certainly in the city of Albuquerque, where, and I've frankly seen it in Rio Rancho too, where different communities have different problems, different challenges with their development. Sometimes it's mixed ownership, that every lot is owned by a different individual. Sometimes it's that people have not taken care of their property and let it go into disrepair. But so the reason the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act exists and was adopted here is because it is broad enough to have a number of tools to approach a specific piece of property like this one. So in answer directly to your question, no, you're not unique. Communities do adopt different forms of process, redevelopment, finance, but the Redevelopment Act gives them the authority and the power to do that.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions? Okay, it's now time for the appellant to ask questions. Please approach.
Okay.
At this time,
You heard him, right, Mel? You heard his, yeah.
now at this time, commissioners, not appellants, will be given, commentators will be given an opportunity to speak. I have a list of those who signed up prior to the meeting. I will call upon you one by one. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Tom Donaldson.
Here comes Tom.
Amy Legend.
Mr. Chair, don't I get a chance to present our case?
Yes.
Yes.
So why aren't we being called on?
It's now time for the appellant to present their case.
There it is.
You have 25 minutes, and I haven't taken any off when you put your hearing aid on.
Well, since I can't hear you, I'll just keep talking as long as I want.
I can't hear you either.
Mr. Chair and distinguished members of the commission, Mr. Campbell was a good choice as a lawyer. I've known him for very many years. We used to work together, and Palindrome is very well represented. However, he did not address the objections that we have made in our appeal. May I ask, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but has everybody read the appeal we wrote? Everybody?
Yes?
Good, good. Because if you did, you're going to know that a lot of what he said about Friends of Los Ranchos, although it may be important, it's totally irrelevant to our appeal. And what I would like to do, rather than, I'm going to spend a few moments responding to him. He's a good lawyer, and he's not addressing the points we have. He's trying to be very upbeat about what's going on. But he started off by saying that 9.2.24 VC, I'm sorry, 9.2.14 VC mentions development agreements. And all it says is that the Village Center project area includes land within the Village Center zone, doesn't include all that land, and it goes on to say that the village can enter into, the village can control development parameters requiring economic plans, and they can enter into development agreements. That's no authority for what they've just done. What they've just done is absolutely amazing, and it's outrageous, frankly. They took the development agreement 3.3 is a very brief bit of language, which I'm going to read to you. It says, developer at its own cost with the assistance of the village shall submit any and all design and site plans, elevations, and construction specifications to the planning, zoning director, and village administrator for approval in accordance with section 9.2.14 of the village code. 9.2.14 makes no mention of the fact that this interpretation of 3.3 that has been given by Maida Rubin and Ann Simon is totally, it's not mentioned here at all. They didn't, the agreement doesn't say that what they're entitled to do is to basically replace and supersede all of the zoning ordinances that have been carefully placed into the comprehensive zoning ordinance. This is ridiculous. Every one of you, when you took your oath of office, and I assume you remember your oath of office because some of you haven't been on very long, you swore, the Constitution requires this, that you would support state statutes, local ordinances, and the Constitution. There is nothing in 9.2.14 that in any way authorizes what has been done. What has been done is that this 3.3 has been interpreted in a very broad way to strip your commission and the trustees from what the ordinance says you have control of. The ordinance is very clear. Site development plans and plats go to both the commissioners and the trustees. You normally make a recommendation to the trustees, although in the case of plans, the plats, you do more than that. But the ordinances say you will not approve a plat without a public hearing. It's right in the ordinance, and we quote it. And it's just amazing to me that you as commissioners and the trustees would put up for a minute with being stripped of your power to review and approve major subdivision plats and site development plans. It is, if you recommend approval, you're going to gut your zoning ordinance, because for the rest of this piece of property, the total 12 acres, they won't come to you or the trustees for anything. You won't have anything to say about it. You'll have Maida Rubin and Ann Simon signing off whatever the mayor wants her to sign. I haven't talked to the mayor, but the mayor hires them, and there's nothing, I have nothing against Maida or Ann. They're good people, but they're obviously carrying out a program that somebody asked them to carry out. And what they're not entitled to do, what you're not entitled to do, and what the trustees are not entitled to do, is ignore the duly enacted ordinances that control all zoning. This 3.3, it's interesting what they've done with it, because they know that under 3.3, there's no description of what the review process is going to be. There's no description about what all of the requirements that are in the ordinance for site development plans and plats. There's nothing in 3.3 about that. So when you throw out the ordinances the way they have, and I'm not, Maida and Ann didn't do this by themselves. I mean, they're carrying out somebody's policy. But you cannot take bits and pieces of the ordinances that you sort of want to make up for the deficiency in regulation in 3.3. 3.3 tells you nothing about how to review, how do you approve it. It tells you nothing about all the restrictions that have to be followed when you're doing a site development plan. It tells you nothing about what...
Mr. Eves, if I can interrupt for 1 second, I apologize. Could you speak into the microphone, please? Or losing you online.
Okay. I thank you very much. Yeah. So please understand that if you approve these notices of decision, you are throwing the zoning ordinance out for the rest of this project. It's as simple as that. And that is very bad business. It is very much against what you said you swore you would do. And I would, one of the things about the development agreement that I didn't want to miss. This development agreement, David said that the trustees approved it. They did, yeah. I've watched the video. I've watched it 2 or 3 times. And I heard Ann introduce Nan as the author of the development agreement. And I heard Nan say that it was largely modeled after an agreement between the city of Albuquerque and Palindrome for the Elvado project down to the country club. So I really wanted to get my hands on that document after I saw Nan said that. I tried to get it from Nan, and they didn't have it. So I got it from the village, from the city. And they don't have a 3.3. 3.3 was put in the negotiations. I don't know if, I mean, I wasn't allowed to ask any questions of Maida, but I don't know who suggested 3.3. But it was not in the agreement that was signed down by Palindrome near the country club. However, the rest of the agreement does, as Nan said, model very closely the agreement that was done to the city of Albuquerque. When this went in front of the board of trustees, it took less than 15 minutes to get approval. There was no explanation, none. Nan did not take the board through section by section and explain the ramifications of this and what this meant. There was no mention of 3.3 on that videotape. Nobody told the trustees that when you do this, we're going to totally route all of the zoning applications to Ann Simon and to Maida, and we're not going to send them to the commission or to the trustees. There is not a leg to stand on in this agreement. And you're going to be doing a very big disservice to the village. Make them do it right. Make them go through all the ordinances and comply with them. That's what the law says, for God's sake. And you've sworn to support and uphold the law. If you do this, you're making a mockery of that oath you took when you were sworn in. And I want to tell you another thing about the development agreement, because if the trustees read it, I don't know if they did or not, it's a long document, but if the trustees read it, they would have seen section 15.1, compliance with law. It says, developer will at all times during the term of this agreement, at their own expense, comply with federal, state, county, municipal, and other governmental statutes, ordinance, laws, standards, provisions, rules, and regulations now or hereafter enacted or amended affecting the property. If there was no explanation from Nan to the board, and if a trustee read this, the trustee would read what I just read you and say, "Oh, okay, great. They're gonna comply with all of our ordinances." I just don't understand how, frankly, and I don't know who put the interpretation on 3.3 that is causing the problem I'm describing, but I don't understand, frankly, how village council could allow that kind of interpretation to take place, given the language in the ordinances and the language in the development agreement. And I think it'd be a travesty if you approve this. Let me talk a bit about conflict of interest. And David, God help him, he's got a tough case to handle. And he may think, thank you. he made the comment that Radnovich had no involvement. My gosh, Radnovich signed these 3 applications. Radnovich is a landscape architect. The village form of application has to be signed by either an engineer or an architect for the applicant. He fit that bill. He signed it as principal of his company. His company has a contract with Palindrome for landscaping design. The ordinances in the village are very, very clear. Commissioners, and I'm sure you're aware of this, commissioners and trustees cannot do anything to have a conflict of interest. My gosh, every time there's a meeting, I've had Nan and other people tell me so many times, it's quasi-judicial. This is the judge. They're supposed to be fair and impartial. You can't talk to them. You don't know ex parte conversations, nothing like that. This is an ex parte proceeding. I'm sorry, an quasi-judicial proceeding. And you are judges, and you're supposed to be fair and impartial. And you can't carry out that job if you don't obey the law, for God's sake. Due process of law in this country under state and federal constitutions requires that governmental bodies like you and the trustees follow the law, and that procedurally you comply with the law, and if you don't, it gets turned around. And part of that law is the conflict of interest law here in the village. And if I'm amazed that Nan and Maida and Ann, who all knew that George Radnick signed the applications. He signed it in March 28th of last year, more than a year ago. And here we are today. No one has done anything about it. We raised it in our objections, we raised it in our appeals, and we filed 2 lawsuits in state court raising it. That you can't do that. That application is void from the beginning because it was signed by a person who was being given a contract worth a lot of money. I don't know how much it was or how much it is, and he still has the contract. And it was bad enough that they allowed him to do that. And then, of course, Tiffany was here then. It wasn't Maida. But I can't imagine why Ann and Tiffany would allow a setting trustee to sign these applications in view of the conflict of interest rules in this village. And moreover, I can't imagine Nan Winter, your attorney, sitting back and letting that happen. And most of all, I can't believe Palindrome. They're a sophisticated, wealthy company. Why would they take a chance and do something like that? Well, when I looked at the application, I was stunned, not just by that, but the form that is prepared by the village has, it's about 10, 11 pages, 9 of those pages were blank. They had blank spots. The blanks weren't filled in. And the ordinances say that you have to to do these applications, you have to use the form that the village planning and zoning director has developed. You got to do it. You got to fill it in completely, and you got to do it right, or they'll throw it back in your face. Here, 2 things happened that make me really wonder what's going on. If you get on the website, you'll see that the application for site plan approval, site development plan approval, is on the website. And that application follows very carefully the ordinances. It has 2 boxes in this multi-page ordinance application for a sign-off that the commission has reviewed it and recommends it, and that the Board of Trustees has reviewed it and approves it, final approval. And the ordinance says, if you've read our appeal, the ordinance says that the Board of Trustees has reserved unto itself the exclusive power to approve site development plans. And they also have the exclusive power to final approve for major subdivision plats. Neither one of those things happened here. The Board of Trustees hasn't given final approval to either one of those things here. And it's like 3.3 and just threw all the ordinances right out the window. I just don't know how you can say yes to this under these circumstances. And let's go back to George Radnovic. He's a good guy. I mean, I like him. I'm sorry that this has come up, but it was very foolish. He was a sitting trustee. It was very foolish to him to do what he did. And it was very foolish for Tiffany and Ann and even the mayor to let him do it. I mean, it should have never happened. So was there did that cause any favoritism to be given to Palindrome? Well, there's 9 pages of blank spaces in the application that aren't filled out. If one of us went to the Planning and Zoning Committee or director and turned in an application like that, you think they would accept it? Do you think the fact that he was a trustee might have had some influence? Come on. I mean, let's live in the real world here. And why is everybody trying so hard to preserve this shoddy piece, frankly, of legal work on behalf of Village Council? She should have been all over this and not allow it to happen. And she has a lot to answer for, because if this is not going to be over tonight. We've got 3 lawsuits or 2 lawsuits. One, David was talking about the amount of money that's been spent, and he's talking about the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act and the fact that there has to be a declaration of blight. One of the lawsuits is pointed right at that. There was never any blight on that property. It was 12 acres of land, and the village. And if you remember, I went over there a lot. I mean, there was a pharmacy over there, a dance studio. So the village over a course of time between 2007 and 2018, the village paid $10 million for that blighted property. Now, do you really think that the village would pay $10 million for blighted property? And then they sell it to Palindrome for $1 per tract. There are too many things going on here, folks, that you as the sworn commissioners and that the trustees really ought to think about. Another thing to throw in this, what I think is an embarrassing mess, is that you had a sitting trustee, Pablo Rael, who sold all that land on Osuna that he owed just the other side of the little shopping center for a very, very good price. And understand, but that when the sale was closed, he had gone off the board. But another interesting thing about the development agreement that was done for the city of Albuquerque had a fair dealing and no conflict provision in it, which for the most part Nan copied when she did the development agreement in this case. But there was a portion of that development agreement, that no conflict and that fair dealing clause, that she left out. It required Palindrome to say that for the last 2 years, they had not paid anything of value to any official or representative of the city of Albuquerque. That was left out of the development agreement that was signed for the village. Because if it had been in there, they would have had to disclose that they had bought that land from Pablo Rael for a very hefty price. And I have not compared the price. I don't know if it was appraised or not. But that together with George signing off and looking at that.
Mr. Eves, can you finish your thought? Your time has expired.
Okay. If you just take a look at that application, don't take my word for it, look at the blank pages in it. One final point. 25 minutes is not enough to do this. This is too important. And I know none of you guys are trying to do anything bad, but you know, I was first told it would be 15 minutes. And I frankly think 15 minutes was set to keep us from talking about all of these things I'm talking about. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to the mayor. It's embarrassing for the people who've had to carry out his orders. And I don't know if he gave the orders. I ought to take that back. But I assume they wouldn't do something he didn't want them to do. And I just hope that you do the right thing here, because you took an oath to follow the law. And the law is in the ordinances. Please do that. Please do that.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Eves?
Please, I'd love to have questions.
Commissioner Barrow?
No, go ahead.
It was a lot in 25 minutes, Mel. But assume that everything that you wanted will be granted. What do you propose to do with the project now?
Great
today?
question. Great question. I didn't get to it, and I thank you.
Understanding your time
Thank you.
limitations, can you keep it short? Please.
You have
Please.
25 minutes.
Well, that's another 25. Good. Okay. No, I'll try to. Yeah, you know, the other thing that's remarkable about this is that, have you ever seen a major project like this that was allowed to commence construction before the site development plan was finally approved? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It happened here, There's no site development plan that's been approved here.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but could you please answer my question directly?
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Palindrome knows that. Palindrome is rushing to get this thing out of the ground.
Excuse me, my question was to you, what would you do today?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you, but I think a complete answer, and I'll thank you for doing this. The answer is this. This project shouldn't be under construction because there's no site development plan. So they should stop construction immediately. They should comply with the law like everybody else has to comply with the law. And maybe at that point, we can sit down with Palindrome, the people in this room, and negotiate some resolution of this situation. They have don't have any sympathy for Palindrome. They knew all this was going on. They knew more about it than you do, and they knew more about it than the trustees do.
Thank you for your answer.
Thanks for the question.
Commissioner Gay?
I'm going to withhold my question. I think I'll ask the village council when we get to that point.
Okay, if there's no more questions, it's now time for the applicant to ask questions of the appellant. Can we make sure that Mr. Campbell has a microphone?
Mel, the appeal is of site development plans 1, 2, and 3.
That's right.
Can you tell me what on site development plans 1, 2, or 3 you object to specifically?
Yeah, the signature of George Radnovich, a sitting trustee, I have great objection to.
Yeah.
I object to the incomplete application that was filed with the Planning and Zoning Department. I object to the fact that they commenced construction before those plans have ever been approved. Is that enough?
No. When we talk about a site development plan, what we're talking about is a very specific set of documents that deal with very mundane things like hydrology and water and sewer and internal circulation and where the curbs and gutters are going to be. So could you address what it is about the site development plans that are being appealed here tonight that you object to or find are incorrect?
Because they haven't complied with the law on submitting them. They haven't complied with the law on getting them approved. They have not been acted on at all. And you're right, the site development requirements that are in 9.2.25 of the ordinance are lengthy. And you cannot build a project unless you have done every one of those, satisfied every one of those requirements. That hasn't happened here. We do not have any indication that the site development plan that they have submitted have gone through the proper review process. They have not come to the commission. They have not gone to the trustees. And those are my objections to it. I think it's totally illegal. You would never get away with this under normal circumstances.
So I'll take your answer to be that there are no concerns
like this
that
was under construction before the site development plans were approved?
Yes.
You have. Tell me.
And there are, and this is my time to ask you questions, not your time to ask me questions, with all due respect. So what I'm understanding, Mr. Eves, is that there is not an objection that you have to the actual site development plans that stand approved by the village at this point, right?
Well, they haven't been approved by the village.
Well,
that's my objection.
They have, in fact, they're on appeal here, but they have been appealed.
No,
they have been approved.
I'm not buying into that.
Yeah.
There is nothing in the ordinance that gives Maida and Ann the authority to sign the final approval. Nothing. You can't show me anywhere in the ordinance that says that. And they're not, and that's my objection. They're illegal. Make them comply with the law.
Okay. So normally, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, when there's a matter of a site development plan that's being appealed, the appellants come in and they say, I have the following objections to these site development plans. The hydrology is not there, so on. And what I'm going to ask Mr. Eves once again, if there are problems with hydrology, just as examples, hydrology, roadway intersections, curb and gutter, the flow of the water and sewer through the project, any of that?
How would we know? It hasn't gone through the review process. That's the point. It's got to go through the review process.
It has. Thank you. My question was not answered. Thank you.
Attorney Winters, do you have any questions?
No questions, but I'd be glad to stand for a few. I think no questions of the appellant.
I wish I could ask a question, but I guess
Now, at this time, not applicants are out, we'll be giving, commentators will be given an opportunity to speak. I have the list of those who signed up prior to the meeting. I will call upon you
having trouble hearing
one by
you.
one.
I'm sorry. I apologize for my ears.
Now, at this time, commentators will be given an opportunity to speak. I have the list of those who signed up prior to the meeting. I will call you one by one. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'll get out of the way. Okay.
Tom and Doden.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tom Donnellan. I reside at 6668 Edgewood Drive, Northwest. I come to say it's interesting in trying to say what's going on here, because what has gone on is that it's a basic violation of our ordinance as to who gets to review it and who gets to know about what's being built for the largest project that's going to be built in the village of Los Ranchos. The public, we the residents, have been left out of that process by the way they've organized this. Normally, this would have come before you. You would have been able to have a conversation. We, the people, would know what's going on and what was being built. That's been taken away from us. That would have gone to the Board of Trustees, and for them to talk, we would have gotten notice of it, and we could have come and said, these are our complaints about what's being built. We have not been allowed to say that one iota. You haven't seen this until this day. And it's because we appealed it. Otherwise, you would never have any say in what's going on in the largest project in the village of Los Ranchos. And where it comes from is we hear about, yes, the village center has been talked about as an economic engine for the last 20 years. Actually, I think the southeast corner was identified by Mayor Garcia before Hooker even was a mayor, as where they wanted a village center to be. And that was supposed to be a commercial center. The Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan goes through a page and a half. I recommend you look at it. And at the very end of the next to last paragraph, it says, finally, the space closest to the lateral could be used for a small residential parcel to satisfy the need for housing and mixed use mentioned in the village master plan and the marketing study for this revitalization plan. A small parcel is not.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
It's not half of the project. It's not it's even more than that, because there's four of the lots of the 6 lots are going to be residential. That's not a small parcel. That's why we, the public, are upset. Is It's been changed from what we were told it was going to be. It's not, it was supposed to be a commercial
Thank you. Your time
project,
has expired.
not a residential project. Thank you.
Amy Leggett. Patrick Hurley and Nanette Hurley. He's here.
Because we have such a short time to be able to speak, I made a copy of my notes that I'll refer to. You know,
Thank you.
you can read it or not,
Thank you.
choose to keep it, or find some other use. We've been telling you tonight.
Name and address. Name and address.
Please state your name and address for the record. Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Well, you did, but that's me. I'm Patrick Hurley. I live at 909 Salamanca Northwest, and it's been my residence for about 49 years. I've been happy to be in the village until lately, and this is the problem. We've been telling you tonight that the Palindrome subdivision plats and the site development plans are null and void because they were not submitted for review or approval in accordance with the code and ordinances of your village, and that you should conclude the project cannot proceed. I must be stopped until the code and ordinance requirements have been properly accomplished. We realize there may be persons who are afraid that any such action would result in litigation by Palindrome and a huge judgment against the village. Whoa. Those persons fear that the village would be unable to deal with such result, and I regret that the village signed the agreement as it is without prior public review and approval opportunity to comment, but both parties did sign it. We've reviewed copies of it showing both signatures. I'll tell you right now about 4 specific articles in that agreement that they signed with provisions that should protect the village against Palindrome claims if a lawsuit was filed by them. I've been allowed little time to speak, so I can't recite those in full for you. It wouldn't get done. But I give you here my brief summary of the relevant words of these articles, and I've attached to my notes a photocopy of the complete wording of each article that I mention on each page as it is in the agreement, plus a copy of each signature page from that agreement for authenticity. Article 14.1 says Palindrome will defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the village and its officers and employees, regardless of any negligence of the village as owner of the property, where the injury is related.
Your time has expired.
That couldn't be 3 minutes. Give me a break. I've read this to myself to make sure that I'd have a chance to get through it. 2? Okay. Well, it also says that, and if I can make it, no party to this agreement may seek any special or other types of damages from the other party, all of which each party specifically waives, and I've footnoted a waives, for any breach by the other party of its obligations or for any failure of representations, warranties, or covenants of the other party's obligations hereunder, or any other cause, reason, or theory at law or in equity. There was a typo in that contract as signed, but it waives is the only word that fits there, and it has to have something. Article 14.5 says the terms of Articles 14.1 and 14.4 shall survive the expiration or earlier termination of this agreement. And 15.25 of the agreement says no provision, covenant, or agreement in this agreement and no obligation of the village or breach thereof shall create or cause debt of the village or result in monetary liability of the village. And I'm sorry to have gone over my time. Excuse me.
Donald Miller. Donald Miller. Donna Stone.
Yeah, that's a sign.
What?
It's just signing, it's not just talk.
Bob Cares.
I only signed in.
Oliver Reed Jr., we appreciate it. Oliver Reed Jr.
Chairman,
Bonnie?
if I may interject, so typically there isn't just a sign-in sheet, it's for public comments or comments for a particular case. So might I suggest that if folks had just signed in as attendees, if they could maybe raise their hand instead if they'd like to speak, then they can be called on, if that's what the chair would like to do.
Mr. Chair, there was submitted to your office, to Ann Simon's office, the list of people who are going to speak. That was submitted by email. You have it.
I don't have it. What I'm reading from is the agenda item sign-in sheet. If you would like to comment on it. Well, Hank, your name is next if you'd like to come up and talk. See, we're not the only ones who get accused of doing things incorrectly.
The lack of due process in this hearing is palpable. A $250 million project, and people are having 2 minutes
Can
to
you
talk
please
about
state
very,
your
very
name
complicated
and
stuff.
address for the record, please?
My name is Hank Kelly. I live at 6900 Rio Grande Boulevard Northwest. 2 points, factual points. The 2020 approval by the Board of Trustees of the Palindrome contract did not notice 3.3 or the fact that it was changing the zoning code of the Village of Los Ranchos, period. Secondly, the applications for site approvals that are before you today were submitted 15 months ago. Construction started about 14 months ago, but the approvals were only granted in February of this year. How did Palindrome get the approval to start construction based upon those site plans 11 months ago, 12 months ago? That goes into what I'm trying to talk about. This hearing before you is the first public hearing on the Palindrome Village Center project. Neither this commission nor village residents have been invited or permitted to participate in any aspect of that project. The administration has not played by the rules of the Village of Los Ranchos. And no one can argue with a straight face that Palindrome wasn't aware of that and is complicit in that furtive behavior. One of my primary motivations for being a lawyer representing people like you and me for over 50 years is my passion for the uniquely American commitment to a society governed by the fair and consistent application of the rule of law to every one of us. The many ways in which the village administration has chosen to ignore the rules of civil society to circumvent public scrutiny of this unwanted project are shameful and cannot be further enabled. You, the Village Planning and Zoning Commission, are the first public body today to have the opportunity.
Your time has expired.
My due process, I've got 5 more lines under the law to tell the administration and its contractor they have to play by the rules. You may say, oh my, the consequences of stopping construction are severe. I say to you, if you permit the administration's disregard of the law to continue, the terribly harmful consequences to the society that is governed by the rule of law in this community, which you will further enable, are worse.
In the United States of America, the end never justifies the means. You and I are responsible for the moral and ethical quality of our community. Thank you.
Weston Glass. Weston Glass, not here? He's here, but he's not speaking. Okay. Laureen Marble. Manble. Marble.
Lauren Marble, 338 Noravisa Court, Northwest. So I would just like to make a couple quick points. We haven't talked about affordable housing tonight. That's a big one. And the strategy seems to be not to say those words, we use low income, but if you're going to do an affordable housing project like this, which is overseen by the Mortgage Finance Authority, which it is, you need to pass an ordinance and a plan. That was not done, and that's one of the reasons we have discussions like, how can we have 204 apartments with only 110 parking places? That's against the rules. Open Meetings Act. The violations of the Open Meetings Act, which come from the administrative approval process, they don't go away because there weren't any acts, any meetings. Let me make that clear. There were no public meetings. That's the problem. You can't say we don't have Open Meeting Act violations because we didn't have any meetings. The Open Meeting Act says that you cannot delegate your authority to one or two people or a small committee who are not bound by the act in order to avoid the Open Meeting Act requirement. And if you do that, the act says all the actions taken are invalid. And this is on a very weak foundation, this whole project. And it needs to be stopped. It needs to be mediated. We have stuff to work with, but it's just going to get worse. And we are left with, instead of three branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, we have executive. We have administration doing all of this. You guys are cut out, the trustees are cut out, and we are cut out. And this is going to go forward for 5 years of this project unless it's changed. And I think we're going to win in court. Who knows when that's going to be, but we've already won the first hearing. So, you know, the sooner the better.
Tom Donilon.
Having a project that's all poor people is really bad. It's going to mark those people for the entire time.
We don't.
Poor people. It's not a mixed unit.
Okay, Bob Markham.
Not speaking.
Mel Leaves.
You've heard enough from me.
Patricia Martinez. Nancy Nalarona.
Hi, well, you got the first name right this time. Nancy Nangeroni, 7315 Guadalupe Trail. Thank you. And with all due respect to the good faith efforts of so many of the friends of Los Ranchos, and despite I appreciated your presentation on the economic aspects. I think I was part of meetings with Chad Reniker, the head of Palindrome, and we talked about his plans for some of the economic aspects, the micro businesses and so forth, and they're wonderful. But every day when I drive down 4th Street past Osuna, It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. It's up to 2 stories now, and it's like that far from the street. It's right up against the street, and it's going to 3 stories. It's going to be a blight on our village. And there are a lot of people who are very unhappy about this, and that doesn't bode well for the future of this development and our village. So please, I beg you, listen to the legal minds that are telling you that there has been an end run around the ordinances of our village. I don't understand how our legal advisor let this happen. The master plan of 2035, there was a survey of village residents, and fully 50% of a survey of over 250 people, 50% said they wanted no development. We certainly don't want 3 huge apartment buildings right on Osuna. That just doesn't make any sense for a village. That was never part of the village center plan. And it should be stopped in its tracks right now. And it's obvious, where there's smoke, there's fire, folks. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's been some underhanded things done in pushing this agreement forward. Palindrome has rushed the construction because they know that once they start building, you're going to be reluctant to stop them. All right?
Thank you.
Don't let them get away with it.
Gordon's McKenzie? Jordine McKenzie.
I just want to add a few things. The reason for...
Add your name and address for the record, please.
Gordine McKenzie, 7315 Guadalupe Trail Northwest. The reason we have to have open meetings are because a representative government is dependent upon an informed electorate. And the open meetings of government bodies is also open to public scrutiny, but we haven't had those open meetings. On another topic, the site development plans do not comply with the village's zoning code, including requirements for southwestern architecture and maintaining scenic vistas of the mountains, which will be blocked. All buildings constructed after in the C1 zone, and it includes the VC zone, shall incorporate one of the following architectural styles: Northern New Mexico, Spanish Colonial, Pueblo Revival, Territorial Mission, Ranch, or combinations thereof. I've met with Chad Reniker. I've also met with Rupel, both of whom I like from Palindrome, but that's not what we're going to get. We're the residents. We have to live with what is happening with the VC Center, unless, of course, we can stop it, which is what we're hoping. But the Village Center must be compatible with the foregoing general guidelines, and it is not. And I don't know why someone didn't stop it and say so. Again, we as the residents were not included. May I ask, Mr. Campbell, do you live in the village? May I ask? Okay, and Mr. Weston, do you live in the village? No, I do not. Yes, well, we have to live with it.
Thank you, your time has expired.
That's all the names we have signed up. Are there any other people that would like to speak? Please come up, state your name and address.
Robert Chavez, 324 Enchanted Valley Place, Northwest, lifetime resident of Los Ranchos. I'm here representing the 668 signers of the petition that is in your packet, of which the majority being residents of the village and good friends of the village. I'm also representing 28 volunteers of Keep Los Ranchos Rural, a grassroots group of numerous residents that took their time to walk all of the neighborhoods in the village, getting signatures from the residents and their neighbors. They covered the majority of the village in their pursuit of signatures. You will find signers from the following locations: Tenon Farms, Dietz Farms, Rio Grande Boulevard, Caballero North, Caballero South, Chavez Road, Mullen, El Paraiso, Narra Vista, Enchanted Valley, Edgewood, Elwood, Tyler, Roll Road, and all of the neighborhoods to the north on the 4th Street corridor. The petition had two objectives. The first was support, overwhelming support for the Friends of Los Ranchos appeal that you're hearing tonight of the P&Z director and village administrator's approval of SDP 2301, 02, and 03 due to the legal issues that the FOL are defined in their complaint and appeal. The second was very important. It is the request that the village officials restore some trust in them by abandoning the illegal administrative approval process, which invalidates everything they have done without the required public hearings. I believe that we would have had an entirely different village center development had we followed the ordinances. Thank you very much.
Next.
My name is Charles Eberly. I live at on 6501 Meoki Court, Northwest. Formerly, I used to live on 6600 Guadalupe Trail. I've been here for a while, and I wanted to talk to David a moment. You talk about Friends of Los Angeles, but there are different groups of people who have different forms of friendship. And most people in this room tonight are not friends of the people that you think are friends. They're not interested in your project at all. They like the idea of this being a rural community that is generously friendly with everybody. And it's not here tonight. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Go ahead. Yep.
Jennifer Kiefer, 722 Mullen Road. Just waiting till the time gets reset. I want my full 2 minutes, please, thank you. I moved to the village in 2018. I grew up in the North Valley, went to Valley High School, and my goal was always to be back in Los Ranchos, or be back in the valley, and my bigger goal was to be in Los Ranchos. I was able to do that. I don't think the people in this room are against development. I think we're all for thoughtful development, and what the Village Center Master Plan really said, which was going to embrace our culture, our views, our aesthetics, our agriculture. What this project does, it does not bring any of those things to the table. Mr. Campbell brought up that, this was supposed to be a revenue generator. Well, let's just talk. Statistically affordable rentals, housing, they don't generate revenue. I appreciate Pelodrome's numbers because I'd been asking from the administration kind of what those numbers were. And I actually had a meeting with the mayor and Ms. Simon on the affordable housing requirements. We were told $45,000 a year for a household of 4. Did you know that if 2 working individuals make $15 an hour, they can't afford to live in these apartments because they'd make $31,200 each, which is 60-some thousand, which would disqualify them? Let's look at Albuquerque's minimum wage because most employers in Los Ranchos pay $11.50 an hour. That would be $23,900 times 2 is $47,840. They do not qualify at $45,000. So do not believe that this is for working professionals. What I'm against is government making such huge, impactful decisions without input. If this was an application for an addition to my house, I guarantee you I'd be responsible for a complete application. I'd have to come before you, and I'd have to go before the Board of Trustees. Why aren't we requiring the same for big business? Stop construction.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Last sentence. Stop construction. Let's come back to the table and make them follow the rules. We don't have to wait until a judge does it for us because we're going to win our case.
Kiko, is there any?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Joe Craig. I live at 505 Calle del Pajarito Northwest. I was a commissioner 10 years ago. I swore an oath of office. I solemnly swear, so help me God, I am bound still by that oath of office. I did not pass on that. I have worked on this project for 20 years. I brought in the first developer to look at this project, and that's Jonathan Rose, who founded the Urban Land Institute out of New York, his whole family. We have worked on this and on 4th Street. I'm one of the authors of the 2020 Master Plan, which the 2035 Master Plan was based on. I don't know what the hell was going on after this development agreement was signed. I was in the dark. I have been called a liar at the last trustees meeting, giving sworn testimony. I don't appreciate that by the administration. I swore, and I still swear, we're going to work with our friends of Los Ranchos. I'm president. I signed this form, but I am just the tip of the iceberg of a ton of people that are our village friends, literally our friends of Los Ranchos, and people that live and care about this village. You folks are the same. You're part of us. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? Please come up, state your name and address.
Ronald Foster Seaton, usually known as Terry Seaton, 336 Naravisa Court, Northwest. I'd just like to hopefully remind the commission of something you already know as planning and zoning, which I also stated at the village meeting, that per capita costs of public services increase with increasing population density. So everybody may be arguing the technicalities and the legalities of what went on. I would like to answer Mr. Campbell's question that at least some people are probably objecting to the population density that you're proposing here, because it represents an increased cost to all the rest of us. And don't forget that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to come up and speak at this time? Kiko, do you have anyone on the internet that wants to speak at this time?
If you are online and would like to speak, please use the raise your hand button. Commissioner, there are no hands raised.
Okay. Does Attorney Winters, Director Rubin, Administrator Simon, do you have any comments at this time?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if Commissioner Gay has questions. I know he indicated that he did earlier.
I do, Nan, I just don't exactly where they fit into this. And I'm not exactly sure if I should be asking Mr. Campbell.
Talk a little closer to your mic, please.
I'm not sure if I should be asking Mr. Campbell or Mr. Eves or you, but could you explain to me why Commissioner Radnovich should not have, what didn't he violate in the state of New Mexico Code of Conduct? I heard from Mr. Campbell and I've heard from Mr. Eves, but I'm still concerned as, in your opinion, why is that not a violation of the Code of Conduct? And if that's a violation, why? Well, just that's the question.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, Trustee Radnovich is an elected official bound by the Governmental Conduct Act, as are you, right? The Governmental Conduct Act prohibits him from taking action as an elected official on any matter that he might have a contractual relationship with. Not only was this project approved before Trustee Radnovich was elected, but he has never had occasion to hear any matter concerning the Palindrome project. It has never been before the Board of Trustees at all. So Trustee Radnovich has not taken action on a Palindrome matter. And if he had to, if there were something on an agenda before the Board of Trustees, he has already let us know that he would disclose his relationship with Palindrome and recuse himself. However, there has been no formal approvals, nothing on the agenda requiring a vote of Trustee Radnovich on any Palindrome issue at all. So if it comes to the Board of Trustees, he has let us know that he would notice, in other words, disclose his relationship and then recuse. So that is all the Governmental Conduct Act requires. I have not heard from Mr. Eves what specific section of the Governmental Conduct Act has been violated.
Do the commissioners have any other questions or discussion that they want to have at this time? Commissioner?
I'm not done yet.
I'm sorry.
So we could ask Mr. Eves that question. Is that appropriate to bring him up at this time, or is it too late?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that would be at the discretion of the chair to ask the same question.
Okay, I would like to ask briefly Mr. Eves to explain what section of the Governmental Code of Conduct he believes Board of Trustee Radnovich violated, and why that, again, would nullify this application in so many words.
You couldn't hear him very well. I think you want me to talk about the Governmental Relations Act. That act is very strict, and what Nan just said about it, I think, is not an accurate depiction of what that law requires. You cannot be in a position he's in and put in an application, a request, or whatever it is, that you're going to have to rule on someday. And the reason you can't do that is because it's going to intimidate people like staff. It's going to lead to favoritism. And you don't have to wait until this gets to the Board of Trustees to see what he's going to do. The state statute, I think, voids this signature. And that's what ought to happen. But let him go back and do it right. Let him go back and start from the beginning, new application by somebody with no relationship to the Board of Trustees or this commission, and do it right. Fill out the same kind of application everybody fills out. But for him to be profiting from this whole episode we're describing and signing this application at a time when he's a city trustee, it stinks to high heaven. I don't know, you can't have things like that in government, or you won't have honesty. You won't have due process. And I can't imagine any of you would want to be treated in this manner. I just think that when you took that oath meant you're going to follow the law, and you're going to be sure that everybody in this village, including staff, follows the law. And you haven't heard anybody this evening defend the legality of what he has done. You can't defend it. You haven't heard anybody this evening, Dave Campbell or anybody, try to say, well, you know, you didn't have to have those site development plans. I mean, these rules are meant to be sure that everybody does things in the right way, and that we have a village that we're proud of, a village that we've protected. I mean, I've lived out here since 1955. I was a state representative out here. I mean, I have been involved in this village ever since. And I, too, am a friend of the village. And no friend of the village wants to see this kind of violations of all these ordinances. It's not right. And I don't know if this board approves this, shame on you. It shouldn't be done.
All right, thanks, Mel. I just read it. I just still don't understand it. But.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner.
Commissioner Barrow, go ahead.
Point of follow-up. The award to Palindrome was made in 2018. It's old news. It happened, and if you see the RFP response, if you see the RFP, you will see that in 2018, Trustee Radnovich was a member of the project team back then. Despite that fact, it was awarded to Palindrome in 2018, with it very publicly knowable that Trustee Radnovich was a part of the project team. But he wasn't trustee at the time, nor has any matter come before him that would require it. In fact, Palindrome has been under contract with the village since 2018, well before the trustee ran for office. The fact that he signed an application in furtherance of the project is something he does daily, weekly, in dozens and dozens of projects he accomplishes in his day job. So there's just no there, and I did not hear a cite to the violation of the Governmental Conduct Act. Okay. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you. Commissioner Barrow, do you have more, Gay? Yeah. No.
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 On the complaint, I'm Joe Craig, president of Friends of Los Ranchos.
Yeah, we got it.
I would request one simple question.
From you, a simple question, we're ready.
Thank you. Thank you again. Joe Craig, 505 Calle del Pajarito. A simple question. Where is Mr. Radnovich? He signed on, George is a friend, by the way. He signed on as agent for Palindrome. He was authorized by Mr. Glass as agent. Why is he not here in this, during this complaint that we're talking about with George Radnovich, trustee as an agent for Palindrome? Where is he at?
Commissioner Barrow?
Thank you. I have a couple of points of clarification for Attorney Winter. But first, I hope I'm not out of place to thank everybody for taking the time to come here. But I love this village like all of us do, but anger doesn't do me very well. Nan, points of clarification. Sure. This has never been before the trustees at all?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Barrow, the Palindrome project has been in front of the trustees regularly since at least 2007.
Thanks.
And I think the bulk of this project was approved in 2018. In January of 2018, the Board of Trustees approved a major revamp of the VC zone ordinance, what you now know as 9.2.14. In February of 2018, there was a public meeting before the Board of Trustees regarding the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act plan. In March of 2018, the Board of Trustees approved the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act plan. That's Resolution 2018-3-2. There were no comments offered by the public at that time. In April, the Board of Trustees approved a request to advertise an RFP for the Village Center and issue a competitive request for proposals soliciting for a public-private partnership amongst various developers. In August and September of 2018, Administrator then Kelly Ward reported that the RF committee met regarding RFP 2018-4-2. And in November of 2018, there was an award to Palindrome after consideration of the RFP responses. So the board at that time considered 4 responses and selected Palindrome after this competitive solicitation. In 2018, there was an MOU developed and approved by the Board of Trustees regarding Palindrome. It was renewed in May of 2019 by the Board of Trustees. In November of 2019, there was a study demonstrating a $145 million project that was also presented to the Board of Trustees. In the November 2019 timeframe, the master plan, the 2035 master plan was approved after 9 public meetings, and it was approved by the Board of Trustees. The master plan at that time specifically addressed the project area, the Village Center project, and contemplated that this was a Metropolitan Redevelopment Act project. Again, in December of 2019, there was an agenda item approved by the Board of Trustees. It was an amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding with Palindrome. In 2020-2021 timeframe, the board heard an update from the village administrator and the project manager regarding the project and the developments of the project. In February of 2020, the board officially recognized that economic analysis that supported the notion that there was $145 million worth of benefit impacts to the village associated with this project. Some of those benefits included jobs, labor and income, household demand, 10-year tax revenue for the village. In October of 2020, the Board of Trustees officially approved the development agreement that you've heard a lot about this evening. And there, in 2021, in January, February, March, June, July, August, September, October, there were regular updates to the Board of Trustees from project manager Maria Rinaldi and Ann Simon regarding the progress on the project, the MOU, the consideration of the site development plan issues. In 2022, not only did the Board of Trustees hear updates on the project, but Bernalillo County requested in another public meeting and approved a private activity bond allocation of $29.5 million for this project. In June of 2022, the traffic impact study issued, and in July, there was, in March and July of 2022, Palindrome made a presentation to the Board of Trustees. Now, I only started in 2017, so let me back up just a little bit, and I'll speak to, I think there's I've got some notes on 2017 developments. Again, in 2017, other milestones were, they were working on creating a redevelopment plan in the VC zone that was reported by Administrator Ward. So the project has clearly had and been subject to over a dozen public meetings of the Board of Trustees, none of which Trustee Radnovich was present for or even an elected official at the time. It's a little disingenuous to say that this has not been heard by the Board of Trustees. I would also like to point out that this board, this commission has no authority to stop construction. This is an appeal of an allegation that the administration did not follow its own code. You've heard all kinds of red herrings, lack of due process. Pablo Rael's come into it, incomplete application, they started early. George Radnovich's issues, this isn't really affordable, there's an Open Meetings Act violation, this is an Affordable Housing Act violation. Those are all red herrings and not part of anything that you can consider. What you can consider is whether or not the administration didn't follow its own code. But I wanted to give you the timeline because, in fact, this is a Metropolitan Redevelopment Act project. It is not an Affordable Housing Act project. It is deeply rooted in the finding of this being a blighted area and the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act applying. 9.2.14 provides in two places that the village has the authority to develop a development agreement in the VC zone. And in a second place at L, 9.2.14L, it states that you don't have to follow 9.2.25 when you're in the project area. And the project area is something woven intricately into 9.2.14. The project area is different than the VC zone. And what we're talking about here this evening is the project area, okay? It is that spot that's been designated and awarded to Palindrome. Most approvals in 9.2.14 do have to comply with 9.2.25, but not anything in the project area. That's number one. Number two, the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act gives the village incredible latitude here. Incredible latitude, and Mr. Campbell gave you some of those sites, and I will give you a few more. 3-60A-10I of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act provides that municipalities have massive authority when it comes to the metropolitan, when it comes to a project like this one. And one of those is to plan or replan, zone or rezone any part within the jurisdiction of the local government and or make exceptions from the building regulations, okay? The Metropolitan Redevelopment Act at 3-60-A-47 is also incredibly broad. It states that the provisions of no other law, either general or local, except as provided in this code, shall apply to the things authorized to be done pursuant to that code, and no board, agency, bureau, commission, or official not designated herein has any authority or jurisdiction over any of the acts authorized in the code to be done. The act is also very specific that it has to be given a liberal interpretation. We weren't there, none of us were there in 2007 when it was declared blighted. Most of us weren't there in 2018 when this village adopted the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act and designated this project area. The minute it did that, the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act provisions require, authorizing you to use a development agreement and to move into, I think the exact language is, to make exceptions from building regulations immediately kicked in. And that happened in 2018. So the development agreement builds on the language of 9.2.14 that allows you to do a development agreement and takes the project area out of your code, and it builds on the provisions of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act that gave you the authority to declare this blighted and to begin the process that you all have been working on since 2007. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I wanted to give you that background.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
No.
Excuse me, Mel, I have the floor.
This was obviously a set-up, closing argument that has been arranged ahead of time.
No, it hasn't.
And what she says is untrue, and I'd like to challenge her on it.
You have 5 minutes.
Good. There is nothing in the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act or in the ordinances that removes this from the jurisdiction of 9.2.25. 9.225, which I have with me, and I suggest that everybody, if you don't mind, look at it. It's very lengthy. And you won't find anything in this that relieves, you won't find anything in this ordinance that takes the project area out from under this ordinance. This applies to every site development plan and every major plat approval. And the question that Commissioner Barrow asked was a very good question. But somehow how you phrase your question controls the answer. And you ask a very broad question about what the trustees knew. The question should be, for purposes of tonight, have the trustees ever been allowed, and has this commission ever been allowed to vote, hold open meetings, give notices to the public on any zoning application? There's no zoning application that has come to this commission or to the Board of Trustees. And that's what we're talking about, is approving site development plans, master, major subdivision plats. Those have to go to the Board of Trustees. And the answer to your question, fairly, is no. The Board of Trustees has been cut completely out. This commission has been cut completely out by her interpretation of 3.3 of the development agreement. It's a travesty. And her answer to you on this question is terribly offensive, because she's trying to act like that, whatever discussion they have about the project, sure, they know about the project. They knew it was going to happen. They paid $10 million for the land to make it happen. But the issue here tonight, and the only issue you should be concerned about, is has the law been complied with on these 3 site development plans? And please, it has not been. And that's the point. And all the rest of this is window dressing. The site development plans cannot be approved by Maida or Ann Simon. That's against the law. It's the Nan who wrote 3.3 obviously has a very different view. She has a risk. She has a risk. She's not objective about this. If this whole project unwinds because of the lack of following the law, she is in real trouble because of she's the lawyer who did this. You have a duty, a constitutional duty, to follow the law. You're fair and impartial judges of that. She is not objective. She is defending herself and how she did the development agreement. You should have an independent counsel who is not at all distracted by her own potential liability.
Thank you.
The board and this commission have been cut completely out. She has no comeback for that. Come on, tell us about it.
Thank you, Mel. Please sit down.
Has this board of this commission ever handled a zoning application on this project? The answer is no.
The floor is now closed for comments. We'll now move to the,
Does she have more?
do you have more, Connie?
Okay, I do. I'm in a very interesting position. I was a trustee during the time. And looking back the way I remember it, and granted, I didn't go back and review all the meeting notes and the videos and all of that. I remember the Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan that we went over. And to the best of my recollection, there was nothing that ever circumvented the public view and participation in a hearing for any of site development plans or anything else. Fast forward, I was around at the time when we awarded the original contract for development, not a plan, but for development to Palindrome. And in fact, in those meetings, we were very, very emphatic that that was only awarding who was going to be able to do the development plan. The attorney at the time was Mr. Campbell, and the administrator was Kelly Ward. That was part of the questions, that the trustees gave to those two individuals, making sure, because the public was there when we awarded the RFP. And we had several people saying, but wait a minute, I don't like what they've proposed. And we had to assure the public that was present that that was not what we were approving. We were only approving who was to do the development, and that they themselves would be coming back to us with site plans, and that the public would be allowed at those times to do reviews and input. Since that point in time, I stopped, I was out of office, what was it, the beginning of 20, I guess it is, yeah, I have to go back there and take a look, because we changed when it was and everything, so I was out at the end of 19. I had members, matter of fact, several of you that are here today, I had members between that point in time and now that had come to me and said, why in the world is XYZ going on in the plans there? And I quite frankly told them, I have no idea what you're talking about, because when I left, that was not even dreamed of. And I personally have not seen anything since that point in time. And I, repeatedly gave my assurance that I'm sure you're going to be able to have a hearing, because that is the process. So I am quite baffled that we got to the point that we are today. And I'm personally disappointed, and I hate to say that because I see people that I trust, that I know that have their hearts in the right places from both sides of the aisle. We all love this village. We want the best for it going forward. But I am a strong believer at this point that we should have been continuing the process that we had before with reviews. How we got to the point that we don't that it ever got to the point that it wasn't reviewed is beyond me.
The floor is now closed for comments. Each of the three appeals require a separate vote. Is there a motion to approve or deny the appeal of SDP 2301? Approval of the appeal vacates the issuance of the site development plan. Denial of the appeal sustains the issuance of the site development plan and recommends the same to the Board of Trustees.
Excuse me, would you read that second part again, JT?
Approval of the appeal vacates the issuance of the site development plan. Denial of the appeal sustains the issuance of the site development plan and recommends the same to the Board of Trustees.
Okay, so a no goes to the trustees, is what you said. Backwards.
No, if we deny this appeal, it doesn't go to the trustees.
You have to approve the.
Prove it,
appeal.
okay.
We have to approve this.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to deny the appeal of SD, whatever the number is, my laptop is,
SDP 2301.
yeah.
I second the motion. Is there any discussion from the commission? If not, we'll move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Holman?
No.
Commissioner Barrow?
No.
Now, you voted to deny, right?
No, she's saying no to the denial.
Against the
Yes,
motion.
okay.
So
Commissioner Gay?
It's a double negative, is what I.
Yes. Commissioner Gay?
I forgot.
You made the motion.
I made the motion
I'm
to
trying to
deny.
figure it out.
Deny.
So, Mr. Chair, the commissioners, the motion is to deny. So voting yes, and Nan, check me on this because it's getting late. Voting yes upholds the denial.
Correct.
Is
All right.
pro-denial.
Let's go back again. Voting yes opposes the denial. Commissioner Holman?
No.
Commissioner Barrow?
No.
Commissioner Gay?
Still lost. Tell me that again. I know I did. Just give me a minute. I'm not an attorney.
So the motion that Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Gay, that you had made was to deny.
Deny.
So
deny.
a yes,
So it doesn't get
is
sent
for
to
the
the
denial.
Board of Trustees.
Yes.
this is a decision. So this is a final decision at this point by the commission.
Commissioner Gay?
Man. Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Christensen?
No.
Commissioner Michelson? Yes. The motion does not carry. Let the record show that the public hearing, item 4B, the appeal of
No,
the...
no,
They need
we
another.
need to make another motion.
Mr. Chairman, so there needs to be an active motion and a decision. So is there another motion?
Yes.
Yes, I was just,
Sorry about that.
I was just, let the record show that the first one, the appeal of administrative approval for income restricted, is formally closed. Is there a motion to approve or deny the appeal of SDP 2302?
No.
Sorry, point of clarification. So this, the vote on SDP 2301 cannot be closed without a decision, correct?
May I? Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
may I?
So we're on SDP 2301.
I move approval of the appeal of SDP 23-01.
So we're going to redo that?
It's a different motion.
I know
Correct.
it is. So
Yes.
Yes, but it's an easier motion. I get it now.
Okay. All right.
You have a second?
Commissioner Holman moved
I'll second.
and Commissioner Barrow seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote. Commissioner Holman,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
No.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Michelson, no. This motion carries. Let the record show that public hearing I, the appeal of approval of request for income restricted residential apartments in approximately 13,000 square feet of retail space is formally closed. Is there a motion to approve or deny the appeal of SDP 2302? Approval of the appeal vacates the issuance of the site development plan. Denial of the appeal sustains the issuance of the site development plan and recommends the same to the Board of Trustees. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will move approval of the appeal for SDP 23-02.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Holman,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
No.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Michelson, no. This motion carries. Let the record show that the public hearing, item 4C, appeal of the February 15, 2023 Village of Los Ranchos administrative approval of a request by the Paladorn Communities for a site development plan for income restricted residential apartments is formally closed. Is there a motion to approve or deny the appeal of SDP 2303? Approval of this appeal vacates the issuance of the site development plan. Denial of the appeal sustains the issuance of the site development plan and recommends the same to the Board of Trustees. Is there a motion from a commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, I will move approval of the appeal of SDP 23-03.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Holman made the motion. Commissioner Barrow seconded. I'll call for a roll call vote. Commissioner Holman?
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
No.
Commissioner Christensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Michelson? No. This motion carries. Let the record show that public hearing item 4D, appeal of the February 15th, 2023 Village of Los Ranchos administrative approval of a request for Paladone Communities for a site development plan for income restricted residential apartments is formally closed. Thank you attendees for coming and participating. There is no old business. There is no new business. We'll now have a report from the Planning and Zoning Director, Rubin. May we have the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the department has been keeping busy with all of our typical tasks. Ms. Austin is processing parcel permits, commercial signs, solar, fences, walls, business licenses, and zone review permits. She's also been helping. She has also been helping assemble commission meeting minutes, agendas, and meeting packets. Mr. Sanchez has been working with property owners to bring their properties into compliance. He is constantly responding to complaints and working with residents on various property issues. So I have been processing public hearing applications, working with citizens on potential public hearing applications, among many other tasks. I also staff various boards and committees, including the Mid-Region, or the Middle Rio Grande Stormwater Quality Team, the Transportation Coordinating Committee, the TCC at the Mid-Region Council of Governments, and the Active Transportation Committee, also at Mr. Cog, all of which met in April. And of note, this month, the Planning and Zoning Department staff met with Hamari pertaining to April. It's now May, but this department report is for last month. We met with Hamari, which is the company assisting the village in identifying unlicensed short-term rentals in order to better coordinate bringing these properties into compliance. So we are following up on that and trying to close that loop better. And then lastly, this was written in the future, but now it's in the past. Last Thursday, we had a public meeting on Ordinance 284, the Conservation Development Pilot Projects. So that was really well attended. So I'd like to just thank everyone who participated in that. And that's about all from me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the commissioners' informal discussion. Are there any topics, reports, or information that any of the commissioners would like to share?
Yes.
Commissioner Holman.
I would just like to really thank everybody that came and gave input. You know, it's hard on both sides of the aisle. You know, it's like I'm sure all of my fellow commissioners up here, as well as staff and the attorneys and everyone out here, we take things very seriously, and we all want the best for our community, and sometimes we find ourselves at odds with our neighbors. I was very fortunate to have gone through the leadership of the New Mexico Municipal League and its training, and I take it very, very seriously. I am, you know, one of the only 2 people here in the village that are certified municipal officials, and much of that training goes through the do's and don'ts and really emphasizes how difficult things can be and how sometimes you have to make those hard decisions. And I know some of my comments tonight have not pleased some of our staff members as well as some of the commissioners, but I'm following my heart and what I believe to be is true on this. I do hope that everybody that's involved will come and work with each other on hearings so that we can move this project forward in some manner. It needs to move forward, in my personal opinion, but not necessarily in the form that it is currently. And that's going to be difficult. And I just emphasize, please, everybody, let's work together. We've got to work together to make this village strong.
Any other comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, no, I'd like to comment first.
Okay, Commissioner Barrow.
I'm agreeing with everything that has been said from the podium here. We do take our work very seriously and tend to get our hair on our back up when we're insulted that we haven't read it and that we're not doing our job. But I just want to remind everybody here that you have participated kindly, and we appreciate that. But we're not enemies here. We're all part of the village, and that's where we want to be, a happy village going forward. So let's skip the animosity.
Thank you,
and be
Commissioner
friends.
Holman and Commissioner Barrow. Thank
Now, I move to adjourn.
you. Adjourn.
Yes.
Okay, we're adjourned at 10:12.
Thank you.
I need a second.
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 All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Anyone who doesn't want to adjourn can spend the night here.